Please help me welcome writer, director, producer J.J. Abrams, an alumnus of whom we're proud.
Wow, thank you so much. I apologize in advance for the length of my speech. I will try to keep it as brief as possible, as I know that many of you have reservations at some of Yonkers' finest eateries. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate the graduating class of 2017 and thank you for having me, family members, faculty, and trustees. I'd like to thank President Karen Lawrence, grateful for your generosity, your patience, and tenacity. But mostly, I'd like to thank the custodial department at Sarah Lawrence. I graduated from SLC what feels now like nearly 6 months ago, and I never properly thanked the people who are employed to clean up situations that in some states would literally be described as criminal. I may or may not be referring to one instance in particular. I'm honored to be here today. Thank you for having me. Before I begin, I'd like to say a few words about the words "before I begin." This is a commencement ceremony. It's meant to commemorate your beginning. The words "before I begin," this ceremony implies, could be a phrase used to describe your entire life up until now, which is an anxiety-provoking perspective. Anxiety, yes, anxiety. Anxiety was indeed evident in the conversations that I had with students from this graduating class. I reached out to a number of you to get your point of view, your concerns, and your interests, what I should focus on today. I heard a lot of excitement, enthusiasm, a readiness to move on, but to what? Even from students who had the next step planned, and certainly from many who did not, I heard about their anxiety, their friends' anxiety, from some abject terror, all about this new beginning. One young man asked me, "What does a Sarah Lawrence degree mean in this world?" There was a pause, and I said, "That was rhetorical, right?" And he said, "No, what does it mean? Tell me." I hung up on him. No, we had a good conversation, and he was in good company. This anxiety isn't exclusive to the parents either, even though I know you're feeling it too. So this is proof. I talked to one mother who said to me, "I just want to know that sending my son to Sarah Lawrence was worth it." There was a desperation in her voice I cannot describe. Before I attempt to comfort anyone, allow me to address the elephant on campus. It is patently absurd that I am standing up here today. Not just standing, but speaking also. I'm convinced that my being asked to be here for this honor is really President Lawrence's last-ditch college prank before she hightails it out of here. With perhaps the exception of having very well-researched information about which brand chocolate chips taste best with almonds, I don't know what I could possibly tell you that you didn't wake up with this morning. However, I am nearly 30 years older than I just lost the feeling in my legs saying that. I'm 30 years older than these graduates, and I've chosen 10 random things that I've learned over the years that I hope is vaguely relevant at best, which is my ambition. So, in no particular order, to my illustrious fellow Sarah Lawrence graduates, here are 10 things. Number 1, write thank you notes. Have you ever been to a restaurant with someone who doesn't say thank you when the waiter brings the food? Yeah. Don't trust that person. I mean, I'm not saying don't know them or work with them, just don't trust them deeply. Firstly, that person clearly never worked at a restaurant. Secondly, that person is lacking a fundamental ingredient that shows they understand their place in the world, and that is gratitude. Every night, our family does our thankfuls. We sit down when we have dinner, we hold hands, and we say what we were thankful for that day. Just saying what you were grateful for, stopping and pausing, it's a remarkable thing what that does for the soul and spirit. Toni Morrison, who spoke here at my commencement ceremony in 1814, I know, you guys were gypped today, said, at some point in life, the world's beauty becomes enough. You don't need to photograph, paint, or even remember it. It is enough. She was right. Be as grateful every day as you are when the medical report comes back negative, when the taxi that almost hit you off the bike didn't. We are, all of us, always one breath away from something extraordinary. We're also an inch away from darkness. Carry that with you consciously, and consciously requires presence, which in itself is a dying art. That waiter, by the way, he clocks, or she clocks, who's being grateful and who's not. And here's a simple life tip. Be super cool to whomever brings you food. It's not just important to feel gratitude, it's critical to express it. And in that spirit, here's a lesson that my father taught me. Write thank you notes, actual thank you notes on actual paper. Paper is a material made from trees and mulch. I know it sounds like an antiquated notion, but I'm telling you, it's unbelievable how meaningful that gesture is. So the person who interviews you or shows you around grad school or your new office, trust me on this. The second this interminable speech is done, get your ass to a stationery store, get some awesome stationery, and use it. No, I'm not part of the stationery lobby, though I do fear their power. But write thank you notes. Be the person who writes thank you notes. It matters. Number 2. RESPECT. Listen carefully. Marry the right person. I know it's too early. I know it's premature. I know it's none of my business. But I'm the one who's talking here and you're the ones who are listening, so I'm going to say it. For many of you, one day, you're going to either be asking or having to respond to a question about spending the rest of your life with someone. Attraction is easy. Love is tougher. But there's even something harder to find. I think it's the most important thing, and that's respect. Do not marry someone you don't respect deeply. A successful marriage is like an Escher painting. You're both looking up at each other. It's impossible, but it's possible. You want the person who you cannot believe has chosen you, not because you have a bad self-image, but you have such high regard for them. And this has to apply both ways. Marry someone who improves you and approves of you. We all have our things that we do that we love, our little delights. Make sure that person gets it. If they don't, wrong person. Katie McGrath, my wife, we've been married for 20 years in a row. Yeah. Has it been easy every day? Yes. No. No, it's impossible. Can we drive each other crazy? Yes. Does she love all the 80s music I want to play in the car? Let's just say no. She does not. But she's a gorgeous, brilliant, dynamic, socially conscious woman. I was attracted to her immediately. I fell in love with her very soon thereafter. But what struck me most powerfully, almost like waking up, being able to speak a new language, was the respect that I felt for her. Admiration. She considers others, knows right from wrong. She is true. She is kind. Even when she's being super mean, critiquing something I'm working on, and being so mean, I can't believe how mean. But brutal honesty, those words no one else will say to you, is priceless. Not all of you can marry Katie, only a few of you can, but I will say, choose someone you're attracted to, someone you have come to love, and someone you hold in the highest regard. Number 3, wait as long as you can. Have your own children as late as possible. Because, dear God, nothing is harder than that. Yuichiro Miura, who was 75 years old when he climbed Mount Everest, was asked if that was the hardest thing he'd ever done. Not even close, he replied. That was nothing compared to raising my kids. While that quote is not real, I made it up, it's how I feel. Raising kids is preposterously hard. To those of you lucky enough to have your parents here today, ask them. Holy crap, I mean, is it glorious and wonderful and magical? Yes. And would I trade our 3 kids for anything? No. But would I have liked one more year of living in Tribeca with Katie, going to a late dinner just because we want to? Yeah. 10 years more, at least 10 years more would have been great. The great news is there's nothing for you to do about this today, except be extra nice to your parents. You beat the crap out of them and they still dressed up for you today. Have kids as late as possible. And by the way, when you're older and one of your parents is getting impatient for grandchildren, you have my permission to say to them, are you gonna raise them? It won't get you anywhere, but it's a fun response. Number 4, get this door off me. We were in London shooting The Force Awakens, rehearsing a scene. The actors were there, including Harrison Ford dressed as Han Solo. I can't describe to you in words what it's like to be on the Millennium Falcon with Han Solo. It's like a dream, but it's like a really stressful dream. And we were rehearsing the scene, and a mistake was made, and this hydraulic door came down on Harrison and pushed him to the floor, stopping just inches above him. And I didn't see at the time, but his left leg had broken and his ankle had gone sideways, completely sideways. And Harrison called out, as any of us might, "Get this door off me." As crew members scrambled to reverse the hydraulics, I tried to lift the door as others did, and I learned an excellent lesson, which is you cannot lift a hydraulic door. You can try, can't lift it. I heard a pop in my back, and I didn't realize at the time that I'd fractured my L4 vertebra. And finally, the hydraulics worked, and the door came up, and Harrison's leg was there, looking sideways. And in an instant, this like joyous, creative collaboration turned incredibly scary. People ran around for help, but in the madness, I was sitting beside Harrison, and I saw something that was just remarkable. Despite his pain, he calmly asked for his cell phone. He called someone he knew, a helicopter pilot. He arranged for his own transportation to the hospital. He talked to the crew and the medical team who finally showed up with an incredible respect and grace. It kicked the ass of anything I'd ever seen him or anyone do on screen. He acted heroically. 10 weeks later, he was running on the set of the movie, sprinting faster than I ever could. Harrison Ford, it turns out, may not be an actual human. Nearly everything you see in that movie, by the way, was him after the accident. My point is that the greatest moments in your life can suddenly become life and death. But those are the times when you and your colleagues will be tested. How will you act? That is the definition of your character. When times get tough, know that you can get through it, but find some way to get through it. Something that reminds you and inspires you. My inspiration will continue to be the guy who plays Indiana Jones. Number 5. Is Beatrice Shore there? There's a power in possibility that not only fuels my interest and excitement in film and storytelling, but also in life. When I was a college student, I'd wander the streets of Manhattan. I'd be down, at sundown when the light's still out, but you see like the warm lights inside apartments, and it would just dazzle me, the idea that behind every window was a life, and how there are infinite ways that those lives might even intersect with my own. It's like the resonant feeling I get when I go to a music store or art store. I get that feeling of, oh my God, what is possible with this raw material in this place? Possibility, serendipity, is something you need to be aware of, needs to be celebrated, but you also need to be open to. Meeting the person you're meant to spend the rest of your life with rarely happens as you might expect. I was on a date with someone else the night I met Katie. Your career might not be jump-started by a meeting, but just by wandering. When I was a senior at Sarah Lawrence, I was unsure how I'd get my first paycheck. And I was heading down an escalator in Los Angeles when someone called my name. I looked up, and it was Jill Mazursky, this young woman whom I'd met through a friend at SLC. And she was a writer, and she had an agent. She'd sold some scripts. So in an act of desperate self-preservation, I said, we should write something together. And we did. And we sold the outline to Disney. And my last semester of my senior year, I took a train to the city to sign my first contract. I was now a working writer because I decided to take the escalator and not the elevator that day. Every day is full of random catalyzing events, ripples that can have profound effect, or sometimes just be incredible events in their own right. When my mother, who I'll mention again in hour 3 of my speech, was a young girl, she lived in Brooklyn. Her aunt Beatrice lived in Manhattan. One day she called her aunt, but was pretty sure she dialed the wrong number, so she was about to hang up. But back in the day, every call was 10 cents, so why waste it? And a man answered the phone, which is very strange because Beatrice lived alone. My mother almost hung up, but instead said, "Is Beatrice Shore there?" Yes, the man said, "Hold on." A moment later, my mother's aunt was on the receiver. "Carol," she asked, "how did you know I was here?" My mother had dialed the wrong number, but somehow reached the apartment where their aunt just happened to be visiting. It might be an overstatement to say I live for things like that, but not by much. The world is magic. Number 6, the world is hard and unfair. This isn't breaking news, though I'm sure since the ceremony has begun, there's some of that. But out there, things are not fair. They're not fair to me, and I'm a white guy. Getting a movie made or a TV show on the air is tough, but it's so difficult, and I know from personal experience. But get this, 11.2% of film directors are men of color, 1.3% women of color. So I can't even begin to start to commence to imagine what it's like if you don't have my anatomy or skin color in this business. It's really hard. The disparity between what the world looks like and those who are generally telling the stories in Hollywood is both preposterous and embarrassing. At Bad Robot, while we're certainly imperfect and still learning how to do it better, we're trying to help level the playing field. To not just consider those who might not be on the list of usual suspects, but to collaborate with them. It's not a mandate, it's just a principle, a company value. When we cast John Boyega as Finn in The Force Awakens, I was attacked by some online who called me anti-white, which I love. It may shock you to know I'm totally down with white people. I'm fine with that. But I'm increasingly aware that it's not just more fair to have all and different voices telling stories. It's good for business. The successes of things like Hamilton and Get Out, Atlanta, Master of None, Moonlight, and so many others speak for themselves. Of course, the problem goes in all directions. Far beyond the entertainment business, women still earn only 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. African Americans are incarcerated at a rate 6 times that of whites. The world is hard and unfair. In the business I'm in, things are getting better, slowly, but they're getting better. But too slowly. There's a literal ton of work to be done to balance the imbalance, which takes me to number 7, a republic if you can keep it. Regardless of your politics, and given the college from which you're graduating, chances are they're closer to mine than not. Taking care of each other, doing for others, helping level the aforementioned playing field, fighting for what you know is right, not just for yourself, but those who might not have as strong a voice or station or college degree in their pocket. It's not about being Democrat or Republican, it's about being human. Our institutions matter. Democracy matters. There's no better option out there. It needs to be defended. Nothing makes me happier than stating the obvious, so I say this to a population of activists. It matters that you vote. National elections, yes, but local and statewide as well. Find one thing you're willing to fight for, that you're willing to commit time, money, energy towards protecting. You've heard rumors about how entitled and whiny and apathetic your generation is. This is your chance to prove your grandpa wrong. Now, I'm not saying your grandfather accused you of that, but there's a high likelihood that he did. And here's your chance to prove him wrong. No one owes you anything, but you owe it to yourselves, your community, to do your part. You've earned your diploma, nicely done, but now it's time to earn your place as a citizen in this country. As Ben Franklin famously responded when he was asked if they crafted a monarchy or republic, he said, "A republic, if you can keep it. Your job is to help us keep it." It is what you must do. But what about what you want to do? Number 8, lucky problems. As a student, I was a bad athlete. I know, looking at me, it seems impossible. But when I was a kid, I was a bit of an oddball. My floor of my bedroom was a total mess, but it was organized chaos. In one corner, I had a Super 8 movie I was editing. Another corner, something I was sculpting or painting. Another corner, a model I was making. Another corner, I was recording music. My room had at least 5 corners. It was a very strangely... I got lost in the making of things as opposed to the making of friends. And years later, when my parents came to visit the Bad Robot offices, they said, "Oh, this is just like your bedroom, but bigger." And it was true. I've been lucky not just to take escalators at the right time, but to make a living doing something I love. I can't tell you how critical that is. And we work in a building that was designed by an SLC graduate, Andy Weisler. I can promise you, no matter what you end up doing in your professional life, not every day will be fun. See Harrison Ford's leg. Whatever you're planning will not go as expected, but if you can find the thing that inspires you, that you do even if you weren't getting paid for it, it turns the inevitable struggles and heartaches and headaches and fires into lucky problems. Once we were 2 days away from shooting an episode of a show called Felicity, and the script was a disaster. We couldn't afford to shut down. We needed a script right now. So I went into my office, closed the door, and I was in a panic, realizing I had to write a script. I had to leave my office with a script. And then I thought, dear God, how lucky is it to have this problem? It was terrible, and the pressure was ridiculous, but I also knew that if you told me as a kid that one day that would be a problem I would have, I would know that my dreams had come true. So don't ever forget that. What I did, by the way, that day is pull out a recorder and start dictating. I spoke the entire script in a few hours, turned it in, and we made the show. The episode didn't turn out well. But That's okay, because years later, I used that story as an anecdote in a commencement address. Number 9, go to Japan. It's awesome. Number 10, I will miss this. Life can be a pain in the ass. There will be things that you will not want to do, but that you should, and you know it. This usually falls into the category of family and friends. You don't know what it's like to have a life that's not really your own until you have kids or an incredibly high-maintenance dog. But becoming responsible for something other than yourself is a muscle that should be exercised as much as possible. Usually it's those acts that end up being among your most memorable. Something I do, it's embarrassing but true, is to coerce myself into doing the right thing. I'll tell myself, I'll miss this. An old example. When our kids were in kindergarten, there was a thing called Dear Time. It stood for drop everything and read. And you would go in with your kid for half an hour before class, and you would read to them. And there were times when there was something that I would need to get to or want to get to, and I would think, I gotta do Dear Time, but I would literally stop and tell myself, you're gonna miss this. I'd go in, one of our kids would sit on my lap, and I'd read a book to them. Looking back, of course, I recall those days sweetly and vividly, not really remembering one thing I was hoping to get to. Dear Time is now a distant memory, and I miss it. Number 11, I was lying when I said 10. This also has the subtitle, Yes, Mom, It Was Worth It. I can't quantify the impact that Sarah Lawrence had on me. It's like asking an identical twin, wasn't it weird growing up if someone looked just like you? It's like, no, it was normal, that's what it was. But I knew even when I came here, Sarah Lawrence is not normal. It has always proudly been a progressive and creative environment. That means that a high proportion of the student body is artistic, and artists are almost always by default the ones for whom being a kid wasn't so easy. There's a correlation between the makeup of the population of this college and the fact that Sarah Lawrence remains undefeated in football. Having no football team helps, but artists are usually artists for a reason. They're observers on the outside because the inside didn't always present a door. To be surrounded by, to live beside, people inspired to create, to voice their opinions formed by years of observation and struggle, it's a gift that will last the rest of your lives. Of course, it was more than just the powerful sense of community that Sarah Lawrence instilled in me. I came to SLC creatively all over the place. I've been called a multi-hyphenate, but I'm convinced that's just a kind term for a lucky person with ADD. It was in Joe Papaleo's creative writing class that I met a small, round, Italian-American man who not only taught me, he saw me. He believed in me as a storyteller. He helped me focus on and fall in love with writing and rewriting and rewriting. Joe was the first professor I became dear friends with. And what's amazing to me is that that story is not unusual at Sarah Lawrence. What getting a Sarah Lawrence degree means is that you've attended an exceptional college that values the creative individual, personal discipline, and unique thinking. I can't think of a more powerful combination in this new economy. In business, technology, government, entertainment, everywhere. And you'll actively use what you've learned here every day. I've been asked many times why I've so often chosen to feature female characters at the center of stories I tell. I'd argue it's in no small part because of where I attended college. The extraordinary value of being surrounded by so many female voices cannot be overstated. Having a sister as an only sibling, having had an extraordinary mother, prepared me for this place. The last time I was here for a commencement, my mother was sitting where you are, with my father, who, by the way, did suggest that I come here to begin with. I know that day she was proud of the son she told all his life he could do anything he wanted. My mother has since passed away nearly 5 years ago. Be nice to your parents. And ironically, it wasn't her words that made me believe that I and we could do anything that we want. It was her actions. When I was little, my mom was a real estate agent. When she was in her 30s, she went to law school. She became a lawyer, then a law professor, then a painter, then an author, then a Peabody Award-winning TV producer. She showed me again and again and again that you need not be defined by one professional descriptor, that it's okay to live as a divining rod, digging where you find inspiration. What my mother taught me was that life is a series of opportunities, serendipities, chances to be grateful, to do the right thing, to find your inspiration. Which is why there's no reason at all to be scared. While today is important, it isn't your commencement. It isn't your beginning. It's simply another beginning. Like it was going to middle school, or getting your first job, or learning how to walk, or being read to at deer time, having trouble with those shapes they call letters. It might not feel like it, but that anxiety you felt then is the same thing you're feeling right now. It feels more powerful because you're feeling it now. But it's the same. And it was all real, all of it. And you got through it just like you'll get through now. Will it be easy, predictable, without speed bumps? No. But while your fear is real and justified, so is the fact that you're standing on a foundation of your own accomplishments. If you could tell your younger self something to reassure them that all will be okay, imagine your older self speaking to you now with those same words. Or ask yourself, what would Harrison Ford do? Life, I have learned, like any creative endeavor, is a leap of faith. The thrilling thing is knowing that it just might work. I congratulate you all, class of 2017, on yet another glorious beginning. Thank you.